Hi class. So in this video I'm going to show you some specific things about homologous chromosomes and these genotypes. So I wanted to remind you in the first video we defined these genotypes as the combination of alleles. Right, and we said that this combination of alleles is what we see in pairs of chromosomes. Right, so the pair of chromosomes that we have is our homologous pair. Right, so we saw this last time where if this was a number 3, this other chromosome is a number 3. Right, that's a homologous pair of chromosomes. And then remember, these homologous pairs have genes that are for the same character. Right, so if we have these two chromosomes with these two genes like this that I drew up in purple, then that is a gene for some character. Right, it doesn't really matter what the character is. Right, we've been using things like flower color, eye color, hair color. It can be any of those things. But the homologous chromosomes, each of them must have a gene for that character. Right, and then with the genotypes, what we're looking at is the combination. Right, so let me remind you real quick of our alleles. Right, when we look at our alleles, what we've said is we can have two. We can have dominant alleles, which we were using uppercase letters for. We can have recessive alleles, which we're using lowercase letters for, like that. Right, so what we're really looking at with these homologous chromosomes in genotypes is for each chromosome, what's present, dominant allele or recessive allele. Right, so first thing, just think about those combinations we could have, right? This could be dominant, this could be dominant, right? This could be dominant, this could be recessive, this could be recessive, this could be dominant, this could be recessive, this could be recessive. Right, those are all the possibilities we could have because in the beginning here, like, is there ever genetics and inheritance that are more complicated than this? Yes, of course. But this is kind of basic fundamental start here, genetics and inheritance. We have two kinds of alleles, dominant and recessive. One of those two kinds are going to be present on these chromosomes. Right? So we get these combinations that look like this. So if we were representing this with the letter A, dominant and dominant would look like this, right? Two uppercase A's. Dominant, recessive, recessive, dominant, recessive, recessive. Right? So when we're working genetics problems, instead of doing like every single time saying things like, this homologous chromosome has a dominant allele for whatever, whatever, we can just say big A, right? And then we know then that that's implying this is the dominant form of whatever gene is there. All right, so last thing with this is going to be telling you terminology. So if we have the two alleles being exactly the same, like two big A's or two little a's, the word we use for that is homozygous. So the prefix homo means same, and zygous refers to the DNA, so in this case the allele. So this name means same allele, right? So homozygous, if it's two big A's, we're going to call it homozygous dominant. Right? Because if we just say homozygous and leave it at that, it just means they're both the same, but we don't know what kind it is. So homozygous dominant tells us two dominant alleles, or it can be homozygous recessive, right? Two recessive alleles. And then these two in the middle, even though like we wrote them different, big A, little a, or little a, big A, they mean the same thing. It doesn't matter which one has big A or little a, it's one of each, right? So we would normally just write that with the big A first, right? If you write it with the little a first, it doesn't make it wrong. It's just sort of the technically not the way to do it. So big A, little a represents both of those, and this one is called heterozygous. So the prefix hetero means different. So different allele. One's dominant, one's recessive. Hey, and then I do want to tell you, I said this was going to be the last thing, but I do want to mention one last thing to you here. Remember when we're dealing with haploid, diploid, 1N, 2N stuff, if we see pairs of chromosomes like this, so like we've been saying, if that's a number 1 and that's a number 1, is that 1N or 2N? Right, so remember 1N or 2N, or how many sets of each do we have? So all you have to do to answer that is how many number 1s are there? Is there 1 or is there 2? And there's 2 number 1s here in my little picture, so this would be 2N. And what if we just had this? 1 number 1, 1N or 2N? Same thing, right? You're just saying how many number 1s do I have? 1N. Right, so now instead of drawing chromosomes, let's do it with letters for our genotypes, for our alleles. So what if now I wrote just big A? So remember, you can look back up here, right? This has 2 number 3s, this would be 2N, and it has 2 big A's, or 1 of each, or 2 little a's, right? So how many A's are in this up here? 2. Doesn't matter if they're small or big, there are 2 A's. So if we come back down here and we see this, just here's 1 big A, just like we did over here, ask yourself, okay, how many A's do I see? Doesn't matter if they're big or small. How many A's do I see? 1. So then what about this? How many A's do I see? Doesn't matter if they're big or small. Doesn't matter if they're big or small. Doesn't matter if they're the same or different. Right? So we need to understand when we're doing genetics and inheritance problems that every time we see, here's what's really important with this. Every time we see gametes, sperm cells and egg cells, they have to have just one allele. Right? These would be gametes. Sperm cells, egg cells. They can only have one allele. Right? That's a really important thing when we're eventually going to get to work in these things called Punnett squares. Maybe you've done those in high school. But with Punnett squares, you kind of have to understand what should my gametes look like to make sure you're doing the correct Punnett square. All right, so that's a little bit more with homologous chromosomes and genotypes.